Hello there, I'm Big Alias, and first thing I've got to get out of the way immediately is that I have a cold. I feel terrible, I really feel awful. So let's see how long I can go and see how far into this I can get. I mean, honestly, and I know I hate listening to people who have colds too, so I mean, there's got to be a video for Monday, and I guess this will do. This is Ghost Recon Breakpoint. I want to talk about the beta, and of course, before I say anything, I do want to say that my opinions on this game are exactly that. I'm not very hugely objective when it comes to a game like this, and these are just sort of my thoughts. I would never base an entire game on a beta, so do bear in mind that things, you know, they easily could change when it comes to the full game, and honestly I hope they do. This could be an entirely different game when the full game comes out. However, to counterpoint my where are we now? To counterpoint what I just said, I will also say that, you know, it's coming out soon, and quite often I think people put too much onus on a beta being a beta, and actually things don't really change much when the full game comes out, typically with any beta, so do bear that in mind too. Now, I'm one of those guys who gets very annoyed when whenever Ubisoft drop a new Ghost Recon trailer for anything, because I'm a Splinter Cell fan to a sense. It's one of those rare series that, and you really can't say this about many other series, where it actually gets better. I think it gets better as it goes along, and you really can't say that for much. I mean, I'm a Halo fan, so yeah. But no, this it gets better as it goes along. Splinter Cell, you know, the original ones, the OG ones, the original Xbox and stuff like that were great. But then when Conviction came along, it really refined it and made it more accessible, and changed the way you play, and made it, I don't know, just it flowed a lot better. And then Blacklist came and they refined it still, and they made it even better, and they sort of, you know, improved the scale of things and all of that, and that's great. And man, every time I see a Ghost Recon trailer, I just think about what could have been with Splinter Cell, with this generation. One thing that we're particularly good with this generation is lighting, and lighting was a huge part of Conviction and Blacklist, you know. And what we could have done with lighting now, it would have been incredible. We could have had a beautiful stealth game. I mean, also, and this is something I'm going to explore within the video if I do it properly, a very unique experience, given that the industry isn't really doing too many stealth games nowadays. It's usually stealth action, or, you know, stealth with this mixed in, but very rarely a stealth game. And now, of course, we keep getting these Ghost Recon games. Now, a few weeks back, I downloaded a game called Vigor. I think it was like a free weekend, early access, games with goals, something like that. I downloaded it and I got it for free. And after about 20 minutes of play, I deleted it. And that's because after I played for that amount of time, I got an idea of what was going on here. This was something I had seen over and over and over again. I was getting deja vu for some things. Oh, that looks like PUBG. Oh, this looks like every other survival game ever made. Every element was an element that I've seen 1,000 times within the industry at the moment already. And that's one of the issues that we have with the way that we're doing gaming now, where you know, indie games are so homogeneously introduced into the AAA space as well, or so-called AAA, or as Jim Sterling would say, AAA space as well. You know, and one of the issues that, you know, Breakpoint faces is that there is such a grey line between, you know, sort of independent and AAA at this point. You know, independent is trying to do so much, and the response to that is that there have been so many AAA games that have actually done so much. Like, you look at Red Dead Redemption, and they could have just made a Red Dead Redemption 1 with better graphics, but they actually tweaked things, and, you know, it made this beautiful world. And they didn't just go for sandy desert lands, they went for grasslands and stuff like that. Doom could have just been a sci-fi military shooter with sprinting and powers and things like that, but no, they went for that old school super fast pace that nobody else is doing at the moment. Overwatch, when it came out, was totally unique in a world of military shooters. They decided to do a hero shooter where everything's colourful and appeals to children and adults. There are so many developers that are doing so many unique things with games, and that's because they have to separate themselves from this other rising medium within the medium, you know. And so it's so easy to make something that looks just like something else at the moment. And one thing that is particularly big within the indie scene and the sort of mid-tier scene is games just like this, just like Breakpoint, games that look literally identical to this. although with slightly worse graphics and animations and things like that, we're dealing with a very similar thing here. You're in a forest, there's grass, it's very green and grey and brown, there's not really much in the world, there aren't really many people inhabiting the world, and on top of that, and the thing that most symbolizes the fact that this isn't a AAA game is the gameplay, is the animations, and the fact that it feels quite sluggish and quite clunky. And sort of mid-tier developers, being the clever motherfuckers that they are, they use that to their advantage, and they say, okay, well, our game is going to be utilizing this to make a more intense experience, and something that doesn't have to flow, something that uses that kind of, I would say the first time I saw that was with Resident Evil, where they took the camera control away from you and didn't allow you to aim and walk. It's sort of similar to that. It's the seed of that, where it's, okay, well, we're going to do something that is sort of makes things more difficult for you so that the game is harder. And this is the issue that I have with Ghost Recon kind of in general, is that when Future Soldier came out, I liked it and I thought it was good, and I had a good time playing co-op, but as time has progressed, there's been so much that's gone on. The Witcher 3 took those RPGs and turned it into this sort of mystical thing with glowy curves and trees that don't quite look right, and it was great. It was so fantastic for that reason, because it turned it completely on its head, so on and so forth. But in that time, Ghost Recon hasn't really done anything else, and the problem with that, the big issue with that, is that it really shows itself when most of the rest of the industry isn't doing the same. It really shows up when they are doing that, when they're doing the things these sort of mid-tier and indie developers are doing. So it's the same issue that I have with Blackout. The reason I found Blackout to be so boring is because I've seen it before. I've seen it 1,000 times in cheaper games. It makes the game feel like a more cheap experience. And that was one of the reasons that I didn't like Gunfight in my video about Gunfight on Modern Warfare, is that because they had to introduce these smaller, more geometric maps and more obvious, maps, it felt like a free-to-play game, which made it feel like a cheaper experience, something that I wouldn't want to invest £60 in. Unfortunately, this is where we are with Breakpoint. Everything that I've just said is my review for this game. It's just it feels very, very tired. On top of the fact that the graphics really, they're okay. Sometimes the colors are quite good when there's a fire by a chopper or something like that. But again, you come into this wall of the game's incessant need to not explore that, to not go further with colors, with a new palette, with lighting or something like that. Now again, I don't know what's going to happen in the full game. I don't know if they're going to do anything interesting with lighting, but given that you're going to be spending at least half of your time with this game, at least during the day, then it is an issue. It's a problem. They really don't do very much interesting with the game. This really isn't all that different to Wildlands, and Wildlands I actually thought did more visually interesting, and maybe, as I said, maybe we'll be able to explore more when it comes to the full game. But ultimately, my biggest complaint with this game is that it's something that I've seen 1,000 times before, particularly recently, especially when we're in the space that we're in. Perhaps if this game had come out 5 years ago, or if it comes out in 5 years' time, then I could look at the game differently. Perhaps it would work better in a time like that, but at the moment, it just doesn't feel as though it's really exploding on the screen. It doesn't feel like something that I need to buy, and it doesn't feel like something that I haven't bought before. And as a whole, the gunplay, again, you aim. You can change this by aiming and then clicking in the right stick, but when you aim, you get that Metal Gear Solid style. A lot of this game is actually very similar to Metal Gear Solid, as in, you're stuck in this sort of foresty area, and you have a very specific healing system. And also, as I said, when you aim, you go into first person mode, and as I said, also you can click right stick to stop that, but the default setting is that it's in that Metal Gear Solid style. I don't like that very much. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel as though it really works with the game very well. And also, you can't sort of save yourself at the last minute with a system like that, because once you zoom in, you're not in the place that you thought you were. And I've never liked that, and I didn't like it in Metal Gear Solid either. And the gunplay itself, generic kind of Ghost Recon, except the animations feel very lagged. And again, I don't know if this is just the beta. the animations do feel very lagged, and that kind of works to its detriment. The gunplay overall doesn't really feel great. You look at something, you know, another Ubisoft title like The Division, which one of the best things about the game was that it had great gunplay that really did feel good and varied when you use different guns. And unfortunately here it just doesn't, it feels cheap. I don't know, the gunplay overall feels quite cheap. And I don't know if that's intentional just to make the game more difficult, but again, we're in that situation where it's, you know, there's these elements like, we're going to make the gunplay not feel so flowy and so accessible in order to make it harder. We're going to have to make you look for resources and for health kits and stuff like that. But I've done that so many times. It's such a tired ideology that I would walk around looking for things, trying to quote unquote survive. I mean, this is Metal Gear Survive. This is, I mean, to an extent, it's Red Dead Redemption 2. It's PUBG. It's Fortnite. It's every single formula that we have now just has to be like this. And this is so bare bones because it doesn't introduce anything on top of it. It's just go out there and survive. Now, there are some elements that they claim are changing the formula up. There are a few animations that you don't get in other games. And as I said, there's this healing system straight out of Metal Gear Solid, which is slightly different. Okay, but the baseline foundation is just not enough to elevate the foundation of the game. And ultimately, this game, so far, I would say, is the definition of generic. It just feels generic to the bone, to the very core. One of the most generic experiences I've had in gaming for a long time. And if you look up the word generic, it basically just means, you know, cookie cutter, basic, not bad, not good, kind of bad at times. You know, the gunplay isn't great, the animations, some of the animations I do actually like. I like the way that you sort of walk up the hill and slide down the hill a bit, but at the same time I don't like aiming, and I don't like the sprint animation, and crouching sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, and it's incredibly lagged. Crouching is extremely lagged. Another thing that I do like, at times it's kind of tense when you're sort of prone in a field and you know, they're walking past you, kind of like in Call of Duty 4, though I felt that it was more intense in Call of Duty 4 just purely because it was a first person shooter. But yeah, as they walk past you, it can be quite intense at times. However, so far in the beta, you can pretty much walk past most of this, as you're going to see in the gameplay. If it's the gameplay that my Xbox I think has recorded, I walk past most encounters, and I didn't do that to kind of make my experience lesser, just because I could, you know, just to demonstrate the fact that this could be done. Even in this situation where I ran into like a sort of log cabin area, I just killed one guy and then walked straight past it. Oh, and the vehicle gameplay, the way that the vehicle feels to drive, wasn't bad in Wildlands. Phenomenally bad in this. It feels terrible. The driving is awful in this. I mean, really bad in this game. Some of the worst I've experienced in a long time. And again, this is something that they maybe could fix in the beta, or maybe this is just a very early release, or maybe again they just purposely make it difficult. Oh, and also when you have someone going through so much stealth and so much, you know, being quiet, Lord, this is such a stealth heavy game, and then you get someone hop in a vehicle who is able to just run everybody over, as I do in this video, hopefully, then that's not great. You know, that kind of breaks that feeling of stealth altogether. It makes everything kind of feel a bit silly. The environments sometimes are okay, sometimes they're fairly cool. The forest can be quite cool, but you won't be spending much time of your time in the forest, and it is no different to any other forest you've seen. Sometimes there are flourishes of it seeming quite interesting with the wood bridges and things like that, but ultimately it's kind of a bland environment. And I hate to say this, you know, especially when for this game I've had splinters are robbed from me, and I always want video games to be good. I always do. I had a fairly good time with Wildlands. I thought it was okay, but I had a much better time with that than this. I mean, maybe it's an unpopular opinion, maybe people like the game. Personally, I didn't. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If there is anything that I've missed or got wrong, then please feel free to tell me, because I'm not a journalist, you know, and I can't say that I've spent a huge amount of time with this game. So a fair amount, but not that much. So yeah, again, let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I guess I will see everyone later.